Part 2 of Where Were You When the World Died? It was very difficult to find a way to cheat in the Techno League, seeing that people played the game with enough cybernetic enhancements that it was less a contest of human will over a showcase of science versus science. It was companies showing off their newest and most top-of-the-line tech. Honest to God, football, while still around, was barely a blip on anyone's radar. What was the point of watching a man toss a ball a few yards when a quarterback could pinpoint a player a quarter mile out? What was exciting about seeing a group of men smash into each other when monstrosities would collide in miniature car crashes? All that being said, Benit found a way to fuck it up for himself in a way that only he could. Some people might respect him for his consistency. It was a shame that the league didn't see it that way. He had to sit out half a season while the league board gathered their most nerd-worthy scientists to figure out the contents of the experimental drug he was using at the time. As far as he was told, it was a lysine compound harvested from a flower for some reason or other. But he didn't know the science of it all. He only knew that when he was tripping off that shit, he was floating on air. He became just another function of his internal onboard computer, integrating with it so seamlessly and effortlessly he encountered no resistance or lag time. He was on his way to speak with the board up in San Francisco to see if maybe he could get reinstated. He could throw himself at the mercy of the old, probably white, wise men and tell them he wasn't malicious, but just an idiot. He sat in a custom mover, floating low to the ground, not too far over the tree line with a little sick kid named Egon or Edgar or something. He was his for the week. The little guy was dying of cancer or some sort of hard to pronounce debilitating shit. The little boy had a breathing apparatus and a miniature habitat that took the form of a clean suit. As he understood it, no type of pathogen or whatever such bullshit could get in there. He looked like a little miniature cyborg, somewhat modeled close to his rig. He had the same metal-enhanced arms and side runners on his head to strengthen his spine, except, of course, it was scaled down for his age. The boy had been droning on since they got in the mover. Benit hated this. Not the child, just the idea that someone thought it was a wise decision to pair him with the little fucker unsupervised. It was his agent's idea. He thought that if he came to the board with a little Make-A-Wish kid, it would make him look responsible and sympathetic. But by his estimation, it would make him look like a simp and pathetic, so he was right on course. "Remember when you ran 200 yards and Clash Bailey crashed into you?" said the little boy. "Uh-huh," said Benit, somewhat tuning back into the long, boring, endless conversation. He couldn't forget that moment. It was the one where he lost his left eye in a collision. He was later informed that hit was the equivalent of a 60-mile-an-hour car crash. "What you know about that shit, Igor?" said Benit. "I'm Erickson," said the 10-year-old. "I know, I was just testing you," he said back. The boy smiled through the glass window on his suit. "If I live, I'm gonna play in the Techno Leagues," said Erickson. "Shit, kid, I may not even be playing in the league after today." The boy was slightly crestfallen, but it hit like a spike of sadness and evaporated seconds after it came on. Benit leaned up to look at the driver and made a face to him, as if he needed backup or some sort of way to shut this kid the fuck up. The driver smiled. "That was some game, wasn't it?" "Why don't you tell him about your best game?" said the driver. Benit rolled his eyes at the driver as to say, "You motherfucker." The driver seemed to telepathically feel the glare, and Benit could see him playfully smirking in the rear view. "Well, if I really had to think about it, I'd say it would be my game against Higgs last year." Erickson talked over Benit, spewing facts about that game even before he finished his sentence. "See, you don't even need me, kid," Benit muttered to himself. The kid spoke on and on effortlessly, which was sort of a gif if you viewed it through the correct lens. The sky darkened ever so slightly, but Benit was looking out the window for any reason to not be engaged in conversation. "You see that?" Benit asked the driver. "I was a crab fisherman up in Port Greece, so I used to see nature make violent mood swings, but I've never seen it do this." The conversation was interrupted by orange streaks through the suddenly dark sky. "Oh, it looks like falling stars," said Erickson with his childlike wonder eclipsing his sense of danger. The driver did not have the same sense of whimsy, and he immediately spun the car around. Benit and Erickson were pulled from the centrifugal force. The boy's safety belt stretched to its limits to hold him in place, while Benit, who didn't bother with safety, was stuck to the partition. The driver's look of unbridled determination was comforting, and who knew if it made a difference in the end? The streaks of light touched ground, and like an inhale before a breath, the blast happened. Though they were still miles from the city, the danger they found themselves in was clear and present. The driver's foot was to the floor, and he did not spare the rod as far as putting all those horsepowers to work. He had indeed seen some sort of combat the way he reacted so calmly under pressure. The detonation went up in an orange bubble, and the ensuing force of the blast rippled outwards. The driver had lowered the mover as low and as fast as it could, but he wasn't quite fast enough before the wave shoved him violently out of the air. The vehicle spun end over end like a titan tossing dice. Benit spun out of control, gravity's bitch. As an inevitable conclusion to the chaos of all collisions, it ended in a crash. Benit woke up. He didn't know how long he was out, but it couldn't have been long. The mover was upside down. The driver was still in his seat, but his center of gravity was inverted, and a huge tree limb pinned him there by way of impalement. Benit could see the blood seeping out of the chair, and it was no way the driver made it. Benit felt like a dick. He had never bothered to learn his name. He made a mental note that if he did live past the day, he would make sure never to treat people like background characters in his awesome life story. He looked around for the kid frantically. Kid! Eggston, said Benit. He began to crawl out of the wreck when he heard a weak voice say, "He went towards the city. He said he wanted to..." The driver coughed as if he didn't have much longer to go. "He wanted to help people the same as you. I couldn't stop him. He told me to tell you that." Who the fuck gave him the idea I was some sort of fucking hero? "You play pro ball. What did you expect?" said the driver, who was interrupted by fits of coughing blood. He started to close his eyes, making his last play in this game of life. "Hey man, what's your name?" said Benit. The driver smiled, and instead of using his final breath in a moment of vanity, he said, "The air will burn the boy alive if the blast was nuclear. You gotta get to him. There are masks in the trunk," said the driver before he made his final sleep. "Fuck," Benit yelled to himself. He pushed out with his metallic right arm that was as bulky and brawny as a gorilla. The mover door flew off the hinges from his enhanced strength. He could hear the servos of his knee making whirring and wheezing noises. "Shit," he muttered to himself. He looked to the forest of massive redwoods, then the city smoldering in the distance. "I'm not a fucking hero," he said as if he was giving it serious thought. "Fucking media out here getting kids killed and shit. I ain't no hero," he said more confidently, as if to psych himself up to leave the kid to fend for himself. "Well, fuck it. I'm a hero today," he said as he pulled the trunk apart, put on a breather, then locked the attachment to his faceplate.